Transfer propaganda is the act of relating something or someone we like or respect with a product. Symbols are constantly used in this form of propaganda. Testimonial propaganda is the use of well-known, respected people to endorse a product or service. An example of this could be using a familiar face to recruit people to join the war. Littering generalities is the act of referring to words or ideas that evoke a positive emotional response from an audience. Virtue words are often used. Such could be saying something like "buy war bonds for your children." Plain spoken propaganda is the use of everyday people to sell a product or service. Speakers and ads appear to make the person to be one of the people. Bandwagon propaganda is the attempt to persuade the target audience to take a course of action. Everyone else is taking. Join the crowd. This technique reinforces people's natural desire to be on the winning side. Name-calling propaganda is the use of names that evoke fear or hatred in the viewer. This technique links a person or idea to a negative symbol. Most propaganda posters have the negative symbol being Germany. If they do it, then it's propaganda. While if we do it, then that's information and education. Government propaganda during the First World War was extremely effective in terms of the country's nationalism and patriotism through the 4 years. The intentions of British's wartime propaganda was to achieve certain aims that were considered to help and push the country's beliefs into the war itself. The government wanted to influence people and portray the war to what they believed the public should know about it. It was a matter of balancing political knowledge with public propaganda. It was the government who began initiating wartime propaganda by publishing and producing thousands of media, newspapers, leaflets, and pamphlets across the country to start addressing the issue. The attitudes of many people were changing and beginning to get a bad impression of the war being fought over in France. Propaganda managed to give an awful impressions on the Germans, portraying them as committing atrocities in Belgium, building up the anti-German propaganda to resent them whilst favoring the British government and supporting the war effort even more, strengthening the commitment and faith of their own citizens. Here, some of the goals were to keep the morale up at the home front and encourage people to give their time and money to the war effort, to portray the enemy as an evil that needs to be fought, to recruit more soldiers, to stop information from being published which might help the enemy, to psychologically dishearten the enemy troops, and to give civilians a government-approved version of the war. the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Fighting ceased, and so then World War I came to an end, following an armistice with Germany. During the course of 1919 and 1920, the Allied powers signed the Treaty of Versailles, bringing political transformation to Germany and the United Kingdom by bringing near universal suffrage to these two European powers. In Germany, there was a socialist revolution, which led to the brief establishment of a number of communist political systems in parts of the country. On the 20th of June, 1919, Germany, which was not allowed representation, was not present to sign the Treaty of Versailles. The one-sided treaty by the victors placed blame for the entire war upon Germany. Germany was forced to pay $31.5 billion. The treaty also required Germany to permanently reduce the size of its army to 100,000 men, renounce tanks, and have no air force. Germany saw relatively small amounts of territory transferred to Denmark, Czechoslovakia, and Belgium, a larger amount to France, and the greatest portion as part of re-established Poland. Germany's overseas colonies were divided amongst a number of Allied countries. It was the loss of territory that now constituted part of Poland that caused by far the greatest resentment. As Israel and Palestinian forces clash in Gaza this week, those same armies are engaging in a real-time battle of hashtags and tweet pics, trying to win the hearts and minds of watchers around the globe. Propaganda used to be colorful posters and dropping leaflets from airplanes, but now a new trend is starting where the enemies share pictures over Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Flickr to instantly share videos and pictures so that they can reach the broadest possible audience. What is happening here is that both Israel and Hamas are using social media to communicate over to the other side in the conflict and the broader international community. Both sides immediately appeal to the world opinion to make the case that the other side was depriving it of its human rights. Corporations also take part in propaganda by controlling what the news can and can't report on the wars overseas. War games are making wars seem fun to make it more of a game instead of the problem it actually is. This could be considered recruitment propaganda by making war seem fun and encouraging that the soldiers aren't suffering as much and not giving the realistic visual of war, but instead just making it a game. WALL-E is an environmental propaganda, encouraging people to take environmental issues more seriously so we don't end up like the people portrayed in that movie. Although propaganda has changed majorly, going from posters to tweets, it is still used in the same way, to negatively affect the enemy and to recruit people to join the war.